Have you ever noticed that sometimes stepping back a little, like actually taking yourself out of a situation,
Yeah.
can make you more influential?
Huh. It's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems so counterintuitive.
And it really does.
But that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Okay.
This whole idea that sometimes absence can actually increase respect and honor.
That's a good one.
And we have got some seriously interesting sources to unpack today.
Yeah. Who do we have?
Well, we're going all the way back to historical figures,
Okay.
like Talleyrand, who was a French diplomat, and Genghis Khan.
Wow.
And then we're going to bring it all the way to the present,
Okay.
talking about Beyonce.
Oh, cool.
So it really is going to be a fascinating deep dive.
I love it.
So maybe we should start,
Yeah.
with just this basic idea
Sure.
of absence and influence.
Yeah. So I think it all boils down to a really fundamental principle of human psychology,
Okay.
Scarcity. We as humans tend to place a higher value on things that are rare or hard to come by.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, have you ever, been like when a limited edition sneaker drops?
Yeah.
Or there's like a concert with only a few thousand tickets.
Oh, my God. People go crazy.
People go nuts for that, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's that kind of exclusivity that really just drives like the desirability. And that same principle, I think, really applies to your presence.
Okay.
When you're constantly available and you're always around, I think people might start to take you for granted.
Oh, totally.
It's like that
I
saying,
was just thinking about that.
familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah, for sure.
So, maybe by creating a little bit of strategic absence,
Okay.
you're kind of flipping the script,
Yeah.
You're making yourself a little less accessible,
Yeah.
a little less predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can spark a sense of intrigue and kind of make people reevaluate your worth a little bit.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Talleyrand,
Okay.
this French diplomat who was like supposedly a master of this whole strategic withdrawal thing.
Yeah. So Talleyrand was, he was operating in this world of high stakes diplomacy.
Right.
Where every single word, every single gesture carried so much weight.
I can imagine.
And he really understood that his presence was most effective when it was used sparingly.
So instead of being at every meeting, every social gathering,
Right.
he was much more selective about when and where he showed up.
Exactly.
Like he really thought about it.
He did.
I mean, how did this work though?
So, like, during critical negotiations, he would often withdraw strategically.
Like walk out.
Walk out, yeah.
Wow.
And leave all these other parties to grapple with the issues without his guidance.
That's kind of a power move.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was playing chess.
Oh, okay.
And he was already thinking several moves ahead.
It really makes you wonder, like, what was going through the other negotiators' minds when Talleyrand just, like, got up and left?
Oh, yeah. Like, were they panicking? Were they angry?
Exactly. Did it force them to kind of, like, rethink their position?
Yeah, I think it really did.
Okay.
Like, Talleyrand's absence created this, like, tension and this uncertainty.
Okay.
And it really forced the other parties to kind of confront the weaknesses in their own arguments and realize that, maybe they actually needed his expertise to reach a resolution.
So I imagine then when he came back to the table, it was with this, like, newfound sense of authority.
Oh, for sure.
Like everyone's like, oh, Talleyrand's back.
Yeah. His words carried more weight.
Yeah.
And his insights were more valued.
Yeah.
He really effectively turned the tables, just by controlling his presence.
I mean, it's really interesting to see how this worked.
It is.
And it's not just in, like, the world of politics.
No, not at all.
I mean, we're talking about Genghis Khan today.
Genghis Khan, yeah.
So, this is a whole different ballgame.
Different world, yeah.
So how did this legendary warrior incorporate absence into his military tactics?
So I think with Genghis Khan, it's important to remember that his tactics were not just about brute force.
Right.
He was a master of psychological warfare.
Okay.
He really was.
I mean, he was ruthless.
He was ruthless. He was
smart.
Smart, yeah, and he often used these feigned retreats
Okay.
to lure his enemies into a false sense of security.
So he would make it look like his army was fleeing.
Yeah, fleeing, like they were defeated.
Oh, wow.
And then the enemy, emboldened by their perceived victory, they'd get overconfident.
Right.
They would, chase after them.
Oh, so it was a trap.
Total trap, yeah.
Wow.
So, they'd become disorganized, they would overextend their lines, and then bam, that's when Khan would strike.
I mean, he was using his apparent weakness as a way to orchestrate this counterattack.
Exactly, yeah. It was calculated.
That's incredible.
And, it wasn't just about winning battles. It was about instilling this fear, this, doubt.
Okay.
His enemies never knew what to expect.
Right.
Is he truly retreating, or is this part of some, larger plan?
Right.
And this unpredictability made him even more formidable.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting to see how this idea, this concept, can be applied in such different ways.
Yeah.
It is. From diplomacy to the battlefield.
Right.
It's really a versatile idea.
And what's even more fascinating?
What?
Is that this principle, it's not just stuck in the past.
Oh, okay.
We see it play out in the modern world all the time.
Really?
Especially with celebrities.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know exactly who you're going to say.
Who am I going to say?
Beyonce.
You read my mind.
She is the queen of the carefully curated appearance.
She is. Yeah. Beyonce is a perfect example of someone who understands how to use this power of strategic absence to build her brand and maintain this sense of mystique.
Okay, so break it down for us.
Yeah.
How does she do this?
So it's about quality over quantity with her.
Okay.
So, she's very selective about her public appearances and her social media presence.
No.
She's not constantly bombarding us with updates or trying to be trendy.
But she's everywhere though, right?
She is, yeah.
She's everywhere, but it's very controlled.
It's very strategic.
Okay.
It is.
It's she drops in, makes a huge splash, and then, kind of steps back and lets those ripples spread.
Exactly. And her albums often drop, with little to no warning.
Yeah.
And her live performances
I was gonna say,
are rare.
So hard to get tickets to.
And highly sought after,
Yeah.
So this approach creates this, sense of anticipation.
Okay.
And it makes everything she does feel like this big, major event.
So she's essentially building up all this pent-up demand just by making herself less accessible.
Exactly. It plays right into that psychology of scarcity we were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The less she's out there, the more valuable her presence becomes.
That's so smart.
It is. It is.
I mean, it's really fascinating to see how this one law of power can apply to, diplomats and warriors and pop stars.
It's different fields.
Yeah, how do we, though, as, regular people, apply this in our own lives?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that.
Let's do it. So let's say, you're feeling a little overlooked at work.
Yeah.
Or maybe, your contributions aren't being fully appreciated.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have probably felt that way at some point,
For sure.
So what do you do in that situation? Do you just stop showing up?
Well, not exactly, no.
Yeah.
It's not about, just disappearing completely. It's about being a little more strategic with your presence.
Okay.
So you might, for example, try stepping back from certain projects or meetings where you feel like you're not really adding value.
Okay, so you're not just in every meeting. You're really thinking about, okay, where can I make the most impact?
Exactly, yeah. Or maybe where your voice isn't really being heard,
Yeah, and sometimes it's even good to delegate.
Absolutely.
If you're, maybe in a leadership position, you don't have to do everything yourself.
You have to micromanage,
And it actually, gives other people a chance to shine.
Right. Yeah, you can empower others. But, when you do step back, I think it's really crucial that you kind of control the narrative around that.
Right. You don't want people to think oh, they've lost interest or, that
they're slacking off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So you need to be really clear about why you're choosing to be absent.
Yeah.
And frame it in a positive way.
Right. So it's how you say it matters.
It really does. Yeah. So, instead of saying oh, I can't make it.
Yeah.
You might say something I'm really prioritizing this critical project right now. Or I'm taking some time to, kind of recharge.
Yeah.
So I can come back with some fresh perspective.
I like that because you're basically turning your absence into a strategic decision.
You are.
It's not a sign of weakness or disinterest.
No, not at all.
You're no, I'm doing this for a reason.
It's intentional.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I think this principle applies to your personal life too.
Really?
Think about your relationships with your friends and family.
Okay.
Sometimes I think creating a little bit of space can actually strengthen those bonds.
Okay, that's interesting because you were always told you have to be present in your relationships. You have to
show up.
Yeah, show up, be there, be available.
Yeah.
But you're saying a little absence can actually make your presence more meaningful.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because when you're always there, you're always available.
Yeah.
I think it can be easy for people to take your presence for granted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So taking time for yourself, like pursuing your own interests.
Yeah.
Maybe, even just having some quiet time alone.
Yeah, space to think.
Yeah, can actually make you a more engaged partner, friend, family member.
I think it can, yeah.
Okay.
It's about creating that healthy balance.
Yeah.
You want to be present enough to nurture those relationships,
Uh-huh.
but also absent enough to maintain your own sense of individuality.
Okay.
And to make your presence a little more valued when you are there.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like almost creating that
That space.
yeah, that absence makes the heart grow fonder kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would imagine this applies to your social life too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because, it's so easy to feel that pressure
Yeah.
to like say yes to every invitation.
Yes to everything.
Yeah. Every event, every gathering.
Yeah, but I think it's important to be like a little more discerning.
Okay.
Choose the gatherings that really resonate with you,
Okay.
where you can actually connect with people on a deeper level.
So you're saying like being more selective about your social energy can actually make your appearances more impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
It goes back to that scarcity principle.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
When you're not at every party, every event,
Uh-huh.
I think people start to anticipate your presence more.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And, I think to really illustrate this even further, it's helpful to look at some historical figures who kind of either mastered this concept or completely missed it.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So let's start with a cautionary tale.
Okay.
King Louis XVI of France.
Ooh, okay. And I'm already getting the sense this is not going to end well for Louis.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Yeah, he's kind of a classic example of what not to do. When it comes to this power of absence...
So even though he was the king...
He was the king, yeah.
He didn't really have that, authority.
Yeah, he was constantly present in court, always surrounded by his advisors.
Okay.
But he just lacked that authority and that charisma to really command respect.
So he was always there, always visible.
He was, yeah.
But he wasn't making an impact.
Not really, no.
Why do you think that was?
I think he just lacked that strategic element of absence.
Okay.
He was predictable, almost like a piece of furniture.
Wow.
He didn't understand that by stepping back strategically.
Yeah.
He could have actually created this, sense of intrigue, a desire for his leadership.
It's like he was too familiar, too accessible.
He was, yeah.
And he kind of lost that aura of power and mystique.
Totally.
That you often see, with great leaders.
Right, yeah.
And so when the French Revolution erupted, he was totally unprepared.
Completely.
It's like he had no reserve of power to draw on.
He had nothing, yeah.
He kind of squandered it all by always being available.
Right, yeah.
So it really is a reminder that, presence alone doesn't equal power.
No, it's how you manage that presence that truly matters.
Okay, so we have Louis VI, the king, who was always present, but ultimately not very effective.
Right.
And now you're going to contrast him, I'm assuming, with someone who really got this.
He really did, yeah.
Winston Churchill during World War II.
Winston Churchill, yeah.
Okay, the master orator, the leader who rallied a nation during its darkest hour.
He knew how to command attention.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So how did he do this?
So I think Churchill, he really grasped this power of balancing presence and absence.
Okay.
He knew when to step forward and deliver those rousing speeches that would galvanize the nation. Yeah. But he also knew when to step back and let his words resonate.
Okay, so he wasn't overexposing himself.
No.
It was all about choosing his moments.
Carefully.
To make the biggest impact.
Right. He understood that scarcity, even in leadership, can breed value.
Okay.
So his strategic use of absence actually amplified his impact.
So we have Louis XVI, the king, who was always there but not effective.
Right.
And then we have Churchill, who understood this idea of absence.
Right.
And used it to inspire an entire nation.
It's a powerful contrast.
Yeah, two very different approaches.
Yeah.
With very different results.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, yeah.
We've seen how this concept can work in our personal and professional lives.
Yeah.
And we've looked at these really, compelling historical examples.
We have.
But how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
Without overthinking it?
Yeah.
Or seeming manipulative?
Right.
I think, it feels like, it's that balance. It's not being so absent that everyone's like, wait, where'd they go?
Right.
But also not being so present that you just become like part of the furniture.
Exactly. Yeah. And it all starts with self-awareness, I think. Okay. Pay attention to how people are responding to your presence.
That's a good point.
Are you adding value in every interaction?
Yeah.
Or are you just kind of adding to the noise?
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to get caught up in that,
Yeah.
especially in today's world where, everyone's expected to have an opinion on everything,
Yeah.
and be so involved.
Be available 24/7.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just need to step back.
Yeah.
And just see if, is my presence really necessary here?
Is it beneficial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to fall into that trap, I think.
It is, yeah.
Especially because, we're just, bombarded with information all the time.
We are. And, it's this hyper-connected world
Yeah.
we're expected to always be on.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best thing we can do is actually create space.
Okay.
For other people, for new ideas,
Yeah.
for new perspectives.
So it's not about spreading yourself thin and trying to be,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Everything.
At all times.
All the time.
It's more about being, really present in the moments that matter.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Quality over quantity. Choose your battles.
Choose your battles, yeah.
Yeah, identify the areas where you can really make the most impact.
Okay.
And prioritize those.
And I think, when you do step back, it's about being intentional about it.
Yeah.
It's not just, ghosting everyone.
Right, right.
It's more about, communicating,
Yeah.
Why you're stepping back.
Yeah, and framing it in a positive way.
Right.
Like we were talking about before,
Yeah.
that controlling the narrative piece.
Right.
So, instead of saying, I just need a break,
Yeah.
you say, you know what, I'm taking some time to recharge.
I like that.
So I can come back with fresh ideas.
Yeah. And it shows that, you're committed to what you're doing.
You're not just checking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next time you find yourself feeling, maybe a little overlooked or underappreciated,
Yeah.
remember this whole idea of strategic absence.
It is powerful.
Yeah. And it's not about disappearing or playing mind games.
No.
It's really about understanding, the power of your presence.
And using it wisely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great place to maybe wrap up our deep dive today.
Yeah.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And I really encourage all of our listeners,
Yeah.
To think about this concept, experiment with it in your own lives.
See what happens.
See what happens, What if you're a little less available?
Yeah.
A little more discerning about where you focus your energy?
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the results.
Absolutely.